Hello, welcome back. Trust me, you are able to learn one or two things in my previous lessons. And also, thanks for your likes and your comments. I really appreciate you all. And for the new subscribers, don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Once I drop a new video, you get notified. And also, like my videos and also drop your comments and any areas you want me to work on. Also, in this lesson, I'll be discussing data validation and drop-down list. Now, what is data validation? Data validation is that feature in Excel that gives you as a data analyst the opportunity to create restriction to the kind of data you accept in your workbook. It gives you the privilege to create restriction, especially when you are designing a model for people to use. Now, I will explain this data validation first. This is a scenario as a data analyst whereby I'm designing a model for a school. And in this school, what I want the teachers to do, they should have two tests. The first test is over 20, whereby the second test is over 80. Now, they also have the class of the students. This is grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, grade 4, grade 5, grade 6, grade 7, grade 8. Also the students name Dele, Bayo, Dayo, Ayo, Kunle, Bimpe, Bola, Bukola. So let's start with this data validation first. So for the first test, I want to create this model such that the teachers can enter the score of the students. Now, since it's a score of an academic exercise, it's not possible for a student to score a negative number. For instance now, -1, -4, -6 and so on. The minimum number a student can likely score is 0 out of 20. So in this case, I want to put a restriction because I want to get the right response from the users. So what I will add is I will add data validation to give that restriction I want. So what do we do now? We can highlight this portion we want to apply the data validation. So let's highlight this portion now. I've highlighted it. Come to data and you click on data, come to data validation. Click on data validation. By default, you will see any value. All the cells, you can type any value there. What I mean by any value is that you can type any figure or any letter there. So by letters, it also means words. But we want to keep our restriction here. You can put the restriction to whole number. Now, let's change this to whole number. Let's start with whole number now. Can you see now? It's asking us what? Between. Now, between the minimum and the maximum. Now, the minimum here now, it will be 0 since it's the first test. Now, why the maximum? The student can score is 20. Now, click on OK now. Now, take note, the whole numbers. Now, what are whole numbers? Whole numbers are numbers that are not in decimal form. They are just rounded numbers. So, in this case, I can put 0. If I put 0 here now, can you see? It's accepting it. So now the student can score 1, 2, 10. Can you see? Now, supposing the teacher now type 5.5, let me enter 5.5. This is a possible score. Click on enter. Can you see now? This value does not match the data validation restriction defined for this cell. Cancel. What this means is that the validation defined for the cell only collects whole numbers. And by whole numbers, it means non-decimal numbers. That is why it's not working. This has actually given us a guidance that when the number or the data validation is giving us the guidance that what the non-decimal numbers doesn't work when you are working on whole numbers. Supposing I type a letter mistakenly now, let me type A, click on enter. Can you see now? This value does not match the data validation restriction defined for the cell because the data validation is for whole number. That's the restriction I have placed it to. It has restricted it to what? To whole numbers. Now, let me try another thing again. Supposing I I type a number more than 20 now. 25. Can you see now? This value does not match the data validation restriction defined for this cell because the minimum should be 0 while the maximum should be what? 20. That's the restriction that was being placed on those cells. Now, supposing I typed, let's say, a negative number now, minus 10. Click on enter now. Can you see now? This value does not match this data validation restriction defined for this cell. Let me cancel it now. Because what? The restriction is in between what? Zeros to what? To 20. Between zeros, that's the minimum. 0 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 up to what? 20. That is what all data validation is all about. Now let's fill all these default cells with values now. 3, 15, 17, 18, 19. Now let's do this for the second part. Now the next one is the decimal. Now I've explained the whole number. Now for the decimal now, one of the restrictions for the whole number in this setting is that it's possible a student can score, let's say 8.5, 9.5, 12.5 and so on and so forth. It will not be right to use whole number in this case as an analyst designing this model. So you can create this room for decimal now. In this case, we put a decimal. The total score we have here is 80. Can you see it now? It's possible a student scores 0 and the maximum is 80. Now let's highlight everything now. I've highlighted everything. Come to data. Under data, come to data validation. Now, this any value is by default. Now, come to decimal. Can you see now? We are still on between, abi? Now, it's possible for, like I said earlier, it's possible for a student to score 0 and the maximum is 80. Now let me actually bring this drop down, this arrow now. Let me actually bring this drop down to see something now. Can you see we have between, not between, equals to, not equals to, greater than, less than, greater than or equals to, less than or equals to now. Let's see something now, not between now, not between. For instance now, when I say between now, look at when I say between, that means if I put 0 here and 80 here now, can you see now? Sorry, and 80 here, that means between 0 and 80. Are you getting what I'm saying now? Now in the situation whereby I now said not between, can you see this is another scenario entirely now? Now if I say not between now, other parts, let me use a smaller number now. Let me use, hold on, let me use 1, let me say, okay, 1 and, let me say 20. Now other parts between what? That are not between what? 1 and 20. That means other values apart from what? Between numbers or values between 1 and 20. This is what I'm trying to say here now. That's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. So depending on what you want to do, you can use that. Now if I put for equals to now, let me put for equals to now. Can you see now? It has to be an exact value. For instance now, let me say 4. This is an exact value now. Now let's check the next one now. Not equals to. Just like the opposite of what? Equals to. Now let's check the next one now. Greater than. For instance, like this 4 now. What this drop down is actually telling us that what? The number should be greater than what? 4. Like 5, 6, 7, 8 and so on and so forth. Now same thing with less than also. Can you see? Less than, for okay, now you can be 3, 2, 1, 0, minus 10, minus 15 and so on and so forth. Now let's work with between now. Let's come back here. Not between. Change it to 0 and 80. I'll click on OK now. When you apply data validation to a cell, you can just drag it down when the cell is empty, not when there is a number there. It means there is a data validation from cell D2 now to cell D9 now. Let's see. Now we can actually type our numbers here now. Let's say 50.8 now. 50.8. Click on OK. Can you see it's actually working? Take note, we are using decimal. It works. Supposing we type 0 now. Click on OK. Can you see it's also work? Now, supposing I typed -3 now. Click on OK. Can you see now this value does not match the data validation restriction defined for this cell? Let me cancel it now. It won't work because it's outside the condition we gave these cells. Now let me type 81 now. Can you see now it doesn't work because it's still outside the condition we gave the cells. It's only the number between what we typed will work. So that is data validation using whole number or decimal. That is essence of data validation. Now let me just fill all these empty cells now. 45.5, 60.9. These are possible scores. 75.5, 34.6, 60.9. Okay, let me use 65.5, 75.5. Click on enter. Now, what do we mean by drop down list? Now, drop down list, for instance, you have a list of words and you want to attach it to some specific kind of a person. Now you can use a drop down list. You will understand with the aid of this example now. Another thing is that you don't want your user to type an information. You have a list of information and you just want them to pick one. You can use a drop down list. In this case, let's add a drop down list. So what I will do, so I will just come to data and click on data validation. But before I proceed, now let me clear this place now. Let me clear this class. I'll be using this class. Let me clear this grade 1 to grade 8 now. Clear everything. Okay. Now let's proceed. Come to data. Now click on data validation. Now this any value now, I will change it to list. Now out of all the lists I have, you can type them. Let me give one example. Just observe. I'm just using F, G, H, I, J, K. You can type them if they are small. What I mean small, not too many. For instance, like this F, G, H, I, J, K now. Now, let's see something now. Bring your cursor here. Sorry, let me bring my cursor here. Okay. This should be the source. Sorry, let me start again. Bring my cursor here. Come to data validation. Change it to list. Now, source. Shift Control arrow down. Now click on OK. Can you see what I'm saying now? I can actually pick from it now. That is when they are small.
What it means is that here now they can't type any numbers before moving to the next one, to this next cell now. It will tell them that it doesn't work. Now drop down arrow, now this drop down arrow is telling us that you can only pick from what has been given. I can also drag this now, bring my cursor here, drag it down. Now what that simply means is that now the data validation have been applied to all these cells here, from what, cell B2 now to cell what, to cell B9. I can only pick from all this list. I can't pick outside this what, this list that has been given now. Take note, don't drag when you have actually typed numbers in cells here. You can only drag when it is empty. Now you can see I only drag when the cells were empty to fill in the data validation. Now let me pick out of this list now. Can you see now? It's actually working. Now if I come back here now, can you see now? It's actually working. If I come here now, for instance, okay, this is the next cell. Now let me type 3. Click on OK. Can you see now? It doesn't work due to there is a drop down list that I've applied to it. You can see now our drop down list is actually working. Can you see now? Can you see? Can you see now? H, J, and so on. So how do I clear my data validation now? You can highlight all these cells now. For instance now, you can just highlight everything. Let me highlight these ones now. Highlight from beginning to the end. Can you see? Come to data, under data, come to data validation. Now, if I click on clear all now, can you see now? Click on OK. You can see now I've actually cleared with it what? The data validation that was here before. Now let me type now 22. Can you see it's actually working? Now on the next cell now, let me type A now. Can you see it's actually working? Now that's how to clear your what? Data validation. Now for the majority of the application you'll be using, there may not be too many inputs you want the user to pick. So pick one. Typing may not actually work. Take note. Now that is how to copy. You can see I copied all these alphabet here now and I applied it here with using data validation. I'm just using class in this respect. You can use this data validation for a business setting or for a store. That is why I add something else. Now let me delete this data validation now. Highlight everything, come to data. Click on clear all, click on OK. You can see now I've actually cleared my what? My data validation now. So it could also be for a list of items now, like this item, item 1, 2, 3, and so on and so forth. So what we will do is, let's say I add data validation for some list of items now. Let me clear everything that is here now. I've cleared everything. Now, can you see the data validation is no longer there? Now, let me highlight everything. Shift Control arrow down. Now come to data. Under data, come to data validation. Now this any value now I'll change it to list. Can you see now source? I'll just pick Shift Control arrow down. Click on OK. Can you see now? I'll just drag this arrow down now. Bring my cursor here, drag it down. It has been applied to it all. Now item 1, can you see it's actually working? Item 4, and so on and so forth. That's how to do it. Item 3, let me say item 6, 3, 1, 2. That's how. Can you see it's actually working? So take note, you understand what drop down list is now. Now the next one I will teach you now is the length. For instance, you want your user to type and you don't want them to exceed a particular length of words. So what do you do? Like I said, you can use data validation for the length now. Now let's come to data validation now. Data validation. Now change this to text length. Now it's asking us the minimum. Okay, let me clear what is there before. Click on OK. Now come back to it. Change it to text length. Now it's asking us the minimum. Now let me say I want the text length to be 4. The minimum should be 4 letters or 4 words. Now the maximum should be 11. Click on OK. Now bring my cursor here, highlight everything. Come back here, any value, click on text length. The minimum should be 4. The maximum should be 11. Let's say click on OK. Now, and I want to change this bio. Let's say I want to change bio to, let's say, drop down validation list. That's what I want to type there. Drop down validation. Let me say drop down validation. That's what I want to type there. Click on enter. Can you see now? It actually doesn't work because what? It has exceeded the what? The maximum number of what? Of condition I applied to this cell. For instance, now let me say drop down. Drop down. I think this is still 8 list. Click on enter. Can you see now? But if I in a situation whereby cancel, drop down. Can you see now? If I click on enter, can you see? Let me increase the cell length. It's actually working. Let me undo the last action. Can you see now? It's actually working. If I change this border now, let me say Adekunle. Click on enter. Can you see now? It's actually working. Let me increase the cell length a bit. Can you see now? It's actually working. That is how to use the text length. Now, I believe you are able to learn one or two things in this lesson. Now, you can make use of data validation and also the drop-down list. In the subsequent class, we'll be discussing the advance of this data validation. Stay tuned. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you all. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel and also like my videos and also drop your comments on any areas you want me to work on. Do enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you. Bye.